I do the work, and you give the money.
Why do I feel like that donut noise is quiet?
I do the work, and you give the money. I do the work, and you give the money.
All right. How are we doing? Honey, don't even start. Don't even start. What do you want? You being angsty? Jesus.
It's time for the song.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, Elden Ring. We get it. He rolls, he dodges, he kills the thing. June 29th, 2024. Vaush versus Dave Smith. We'll do alphabetical order. The Ukraine-Russia war.
This war. They're not going to drive Russia out of Crimea. They're not going to drive Russia out of many of the territories that they've taken right now. We should be working toward a deal, a peaceful solution, which has been on the table several times throughout this war, and it's been the West who has been trying to squash it.
Ukraine hasn't been losing. Both countries have been stalling. I don't want this conflict to end in a way that's going to guarantee the conflict reemerges in 2 years. If the line just freezes where it is right now, are we not guaranteeing another conflict in a few years?
The United States of America holds all of the chips. We could offer Vladimir Putin something that would probably get him to do whatever we wanted him to do. And you know what that is, the ultimate crowning jewel for him. How about we leave NATO?
All right, welcome to Counterpoints. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ukraine-Russia war. Emily, who are we going to have?
Yeah, well, we have two great guests joining us. We're joined by YouTuber, live streamer Vaush, and we are joined by comedian, podcast host Dave Smith. Vaush, Dave, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Ukraine is a timely subject to debate right now. Obviously, we're 2+ years into the war, but there have been recent escalations, and that makes it important, I think, to sort of go through some of those recent developments. For example, the U.S. recently greenlit, as many people know, strikes with U.S. weapons inside of Russia. There was the strike that Russia is blaming the U.S. for in Crimea just over the last couple of days. So I think probably a good way to begin is to give you both kind of an opening statement here. And I'll start with you, Vaush. Should the U.S. continue funding this war? And then we'll go to Dave on the same question. But go ahead first, Vaush.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the idea on a systemic level of rewarding Russia for invading a neighbor. I just think, generally speaking, that's bad for global relations, very destabilizing. I think it's important that we support any system that prevents that from happening, and not exactly a novel position. With regards to the recent development and strikes inside Russian territory, I actually think that this is, in the long run, going to be a good move for peace, just because the previous U.S. doctrine, which seemed to be provide just enough weapons to stall the war, but not like decisively concluded. I think that was actually like the worst possible decision. You know, if Russia did an sort of like early conquest, or if Ukraine decisively held its territory, those both end the war relatively quickly. But just interminably stalling it right at the river, you know, I don't think that would have been good in the long run. Hopefully, these increased attacks inside Russian territory, mostly, of course, the refineries that they're using to sort of gin up their war economy. Hopefully that serves as an effective long-term deterrent. I don't want this conflict to continue. I don't want civilians to die. Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have to see how things play out.
Dave.
So opening statements. Vaush thinks we should either fully fund Ukraine or not at all. Seems to be in favor of defending Ukraine because they are an ally. Was that the gist of it? What was the early part of this? Hold on.
And I'll start with you, Vaush. Should the U.S. continue funding this war? And then we'll go to Dave on the same question. But go ahead first, Vaush.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the idea on a systemic level of rewarding Russia for invading a neighbor. I just think, generally speaking, that's bad for global relations, very destabilizing. I think it's important that we support any system that prevents that from happening. And
because allowing Russia to invade a neighbor would be destabilizing. Destabilizing. Okay. I think that's defensible. Wait, 11-second break.
Israeli things that would send Americans into a coma. Number one, entire bowls of hummus as a meal, as lunch. Can we say indigestion? And then how do you do top Israeli things that would send bowls of hummus as...
Okay.
Exactly a novel position. With regards to the recent development and strikes inside Russian territory, I actually think that this is, in the long run, going to be a good move for peace, just because the previous U.S. doctrine, which seemed to be provide just enough weapons to stall the war, but not like decisively concluded, I think that was actually like the worst possible decision. You know, if Russia did sort of like early conquest, or if Ukraine decisively held its territory, those both end the war relatively quickly. But just interminably stalling it right at the river, you know, I don't think that would have been good in the long run. Hopefully, these increased attacks inside Russian territory, mostly, of course, the refineries that they're using to sort of gin up their war economy, hopefully that serves as an effective long-term deterrent. I don't want this conflict to continue. I don't want civilians to die.
Guess Dave's positions. Okay, hold on, wait. When we watch the views from now on,
I mean,
since we views, when we watch debates from now on, I need to have like a notepad thing, so we just take notes so that when we watch these debates, since these people will never talk to us, it's good to just be able to spit out talking points against these fucking losers when they're on other platforms. And people should be spamming these talking points because these people will never defend or be able to defend the dumb shit they say. What are Dave's talking points going to be? If I had to guess, we'll just write down some guesses. Ukrainians are dying. We need a peaceful off-ramp. Ukraine is losing / can never win the war. Something, those three or something. Oh, and something about World War III. That would be my guess. We'll see what he says. Oh, maybe something about... We're loading this up way too much. Russia started because of NATO aggression. It's always something, some combination of those dumb points.
Obviously, we'll have to see how things play out.
Dave, go ahead.
Well, of course, we should stop funding this. We never should have been funding this war to begin with. I think that in the original Cold War, which I still regard as one of the worst U.S. policies in modern American history, that did so much to ruin our country, and not to mention, you know, like things like the Vietnam War and the millions of people who died in it. But at least in the original Cold War, I think there was always a healthy respect for the risks involved. And that all of us should, all sane people should recognize that the greatest priority in human history is that the United States of America and Russia do not go to war. And this was something that people in the old Cold War were very respectful of and aware of. The difference in this new Cold War environment is that no one in the upper echelons of power in America seems to have any respect for this threat. And any respect for, you could think to yourself, well, maybe this will work out in a positive way, that the U.S. is green-lighting attacks inside of Russia. Or perhaps it could be an absolute disaster. And we're playing with, when I say we're playing with fire, it's an understatement. We're flirting with potentially the most disastrous thing that could happen to the human species. If America is to have any role in this conflict, it should be working toward a peaceful negotiation. And in fact, the American role and the Western role has been to kill peaceful negotiations from the beginning of this war and to prolong the fighting. I think that, as John Mearsheimer said back in 2014, the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path, has turned out to be the most accurate prediction on this entire conflict. And essentially, I think since the fall of the Soviet Union, American foreign policy, and just keep in mind, American foreign policy in the Clinton administration and in the W. Bush administration and Obama's administration, these are the same people who are in charge of the Middle East. And in fact, the neoconservatives were very focused on NATO expansion back in the 90s. You can go read the Project for a New American Century documents. And the same people who totally blundered foreign policy in the Middle East have totally blundered foreign policy in Europe, provoking Vladimir Putin and the Russians at every turn, leading to this awful place that we're in. That is certainly, if you care about the Ukrainians at all, has been more of a disaster for the Ukrainian people than anyone else.
And Dave, Vaush.
Okay, so I think we had the Ukrainians are dying. America should only be negotiating peace, like the peaceful off-ramp. He didn't say Ukraine is losing or can never win the war. We didn't hit that one. And then the World War III one, and then Russia started because of NATO aggression. We provoked them, basically. Okay. Geez, what do we have? So many different stupid claims here. He says we should have never been funding the war to begin with. Opposes the U.S. doing... was he implying that we shouldn't have been involved in the Cold War at all? Or what, I don't even understand what the Cold War statement is there. Dave Smith flirts with this weird libertarian position where he becomes like this hardcore isolationist, or is opposed to literally all sorts of foreign intervention, I guess. That's just like his position through all of human history. Let's see. He says, no one in the United States has any respect for going to war with Russia. Is this despite the pretty clear lines that Biden drew for not actually sending troops or anything to Ukraine? So that doesn't seem to be true. America's only engagement with this war should be to negotiate peace. That's a patently stupid claim. The United States has a whole host of options available to it. I don't know why the only thing we would be doing is begging Russia for peace when Russia is invading Ukraine. I don't know what would we say to them. Please stop. Claims that, especially if you're going to source Mearsheimer here, aren't we all about realpolitik? Why the fuck would you listen to somebody negotiating peace if you're not willing to back it up with any kind of force? And then claims that everyone else provoked Russia into invading Ukraine. That just doesn't line up with any of the timelines. There were no... 2014, the invasion happened because Yanukovych fled. In 2022, I mean, they invaded as the southeast shit in the Donbass, continue to rage on. And I don't know if Ukraine was close to closing that out or if that was still drawing out or not. But the idea that there is no, what is the provocation from the West? What do you say here? I don't know how I want to structure this yet. We'll just keep going, I guess.
Made a point that I think you hear a lot from defenders of U.S. support for the Ukrainian war, and that is you can't allow other countries, you can't reward other countries for invading other countries. You just can't do that. We can't have that. What's the response to that? We can't have that argument.
Well, I mean,
you can't reward countries for invading other countries. What's the response to that? It's a decent question. Dave.
What's the response to that? We can't have that argument.
Well, I mean, first I would just point out how absurd it is that after the last 20 years of terror wars, somehow the United States of America still gets to put itself in the position of global peacemaker?
Begins the answer with strange, Iraq, PTSD, what aboutism, vaguely notions towards America's wars, implying that the U.S. has absolutely no role to play in world affairs, I guess. Stupid.
As if our major concern is that bigger nations can bully smaller nations. I mean, over the last 20 years, there's been no greater purveyor of violence than the United States of America.
Do I have color? Let's see. I should highlight huge lies. Over the last 20 years, there has been no greater purveyor of violence than the United States of America. Is it Alt-C for color? What is the total amount of lives lost? Hold on, I'm sorry, real quick in YouTube chat. I love Destiny ignoring his point by calling it PTSD. The reason why I call it PTSD is because there's a branch of incredibly fucking retarded Americans that cannot see any foreign policy decision without immediately bringing up the Iraq War. That's why I call it Iraq PTSD. It is a morally bankrupt and intellectually deficient position. It's morally bankrupt because the fact that we made one mistake in Iraq and Afghanistan doesn't preclude us from ever participating in world affairs again, number one. And number two, it's intellectually bankrupt because comparing every single conflict to that of Iraq is fucking retarded. Ukraine and Russia have absolutely nothing in common with Iraq and Afghanistan. We have very good reason to defend Ukraine. It is a sovereign state that is being invaded by another sovereign state for no good reason. The invasion into Iraq was questionable if you're being the most charitable, and downright insane if you're being realistic. There's no good reason to go into Iraq. Just because Iraq didn't have a good reason, Afghanistan arguably had a better reason. Just because Iraq didn't have a good reason for our intervention there doesn't mean that all of a sudden all intervention is bad and all intervention is the same. Anytime somebody brings up Iraq, this is why I call it the Iraqi PTSD. It literally makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever. Dave Smith and a whole bucket of dipshit ass fucking isolationist policy people would literally sit in a fucking movie theater lobby, and their girlfriend is looking, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, what movie should we watch?" And he's like, "Watch a movie? We're gonna be sitting for how long? That's like the Iraq War. How long are we gonna be here for? Another 20 years?" It's fucking stupid. Every single thing is not Iraq. Every single thing is not the Iraq War, okay? One mistake, Destiny Bra. See ya, permaban. "20 years of mistakes, trillions of dollars, millions dead, one mistake, Limfeo. Destiny is retarded." Oh, okay, so I'm sorry. Do you think Christopher Blowers, let me hear you say it in chat. Can you say "Oh, I would prefer Russia or China to make the moral decisions for world invasions from now on"? Type that in chat. Show it to me. Show it to me. Let me see it. Say it. I actually think Russia would be more moral in terms of how they decide to conduct world affairs. How many millions are dead? Let's trust these people. I don't even know what the fuck that sentence means. Go to Russia, please. I'll pay you. I'll pay you. Send me the money for your family. I'll ship all you fucking retards there. We don't want you anymore. We don't need you, okay? Please get the fuck out of my country. Okay, back to this. Oh, no, wait. Actually, wait. I kind of wanted to look this up. Over the last 20 years, there's been no greater purveyor of violence than the United States of America. What if we were to take every single conflict that the United States has been involved in over the past 20 years, you'd probably include every NATO one as well. conflicts America has been involved in. I'm curious what the total numbers are on everything. Over the last 20 years, we'll be generous and we'll start in the year 2000. Wars, or we'll do conflicts. Conflicts that the U.S. has been involved in since 2000. I wonder how they count deaths for 200,000. I'm sorry, not 200,000. For 20 years of conflict. I wonder if, like, does every single death here count as a... That Wikipedia page didn't agree with him, so he aborted. We're literally reading it now. You're so cock-thirsty to, like, stare at something and find something that disagrees with you or agrees with you. Bleach. Order tons of it. Or Drano. It's probably even better for your digestive tract. Try it. It'll make you feel way better. Casualties and losses. Afghanistan war. We'll say 2001 to 2021. Dude, your brain is working overtime to find a reason to disregard things you don't agree with. What are you... I literally just opened this page. What are you talking about? Homie is really Googling raw Afghanistan and Iraq numbers to prove America not bad. Okay, never mind. Okay. Jesus Christ. The mass unban on YouTube was a huge mistake. Holy fucking AIDS. The problem is that the U.S. should aid Ukraine, but Destiny somehow seems incapable of reaching a convincing and relevant argument. Hop onto Discord, my dude. Come to the disagreements room, okay? That's where I'll be waiting for you. Okay. I'm not reading any chats. Okay. Afghanistan war was a 20-year war. All, should we count casualties or just, we'll just deaths? All deaths taken directly from wiki pages. Total deaths on U.S. side, 76,591. Total deaths on what would we call this? The Afghanistan side? Probably just the Taliban side. Taliban side. All right, state your disagreement.
I'm not him. I just want to say hi and love you.
Boom, boom, boom. That guy's permabanned from the server. And I put a note in your account to never unban you. So good luck. What do you want? Make it relevant and make it fast.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to talk about the Biden debate.
Nah, do it tomorrow or the day after, maybe. We're going over another debate.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I just want to say I actually think Biden did really well. I think the only reason people say that debate's a disaster is because they're not actually listening to what was said in the debate, and they're just looking at Biden as like an old man and shit. Yeah, he seemed less healthy in general, but he was definitely a lot fucking smarter than Trump. Trump was like an unhinged fucking lunatic who was just spewing nonsense the whole time. The moderators had to like ask him multiple times to answer these fucking questions. At one point, they had to ask him 3 times in a row to answer the question, and each time he just started rambling about how he hates fucking immigrants.
Okay. Well.
But yeah, if you have a differing opinion to that, then maybe we can talk about it tomorrow.
All right.
All right. Take care, dude.
Have fun, bye.
Also, feed your cats vegan.
Gotcha. U.S. intervention in Yemen. Part of the War on Terror and the Yemeni Civil War. How the fuck are there confirmed drone strikes from the United States? How do they know if it comes from the U.S. or like Saudi Arabia or any other country? 2001 to present. Okay. Oh no, we'll say 2009 to present. 2009 to present. Jesus fucking Christ. Everybody in the fucking world. Total deaths on Yemen side. We'll say 1,400 militants. And about 200 civilians. 250 civilians? Maybe, I guess. Let's see, we have the Iraq War. (2003 to 2011). Total deaths on U.S. side, 27,163. Total deaths on Iraq side, we'll say about 50,000. Documented deaths from violence. Opinions research business. Oh, these are casualty counts. 2 stars. Total excess deaths includes all additional deaths due to increased lawlessness, degraded infrastructure, poor health care. Okay. At Destiny, the biggest thing in this argument is probably that they think the vast majority of these wars were unjust. We liberals think they were just. Even if we show that the number of deaths is lower than some other nation, they will move the goalpost to saying we did bad stuff, so they don't care about the numbers really. I don't care. His claim was...
The last 20 bigger nation of the United States of absurd it is that after the last 20 years of terror wars, somehow the United States of America still gets to put itself in the position of global peacemaker, as if our major concern is that bigger nations can bully smaller nations. I mean, over the last 20 years, there's been no greater purveyor of violence than the United States of America.
Over the last 20 years, there has been no greater purveyor of violence than the United States of America. That was his claim. Not that we did bad things, not that we made mistakes, not that we've done evil stuff, but that there was no greater purveyor of violence. No greater purveyor of violence. That's what he said. So let's just look up the numbers. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for every global conflict, but let's see. We'll say, if we're generous, total civilian Iraqi deaths. Civilian deaths recorded. We'll say 105,000. Between here, Iraq body count. Is a web-based effort to record civilian deaths resulting from the U.S.-led 2003 invasion in Iraq. Included are deaths attributable to coalition and insurgent military action, sectarian violence, and criminal violence, which refers to excess civilian deaths caused by criminal action resulting from the breakdown in law and order. Okay, well, we'll just record them all, see what it ends up being. U.S. intervention in the war in northwest Pakistan. (2004 to 2018). Just use AI. That's a perma-ban comment. Any suggestions on using AI just gets you banned. Boom. See you later. Militant deaths. We'll say about 2,750. Civilian deaths, we'll say about 600. Second, U.S. intervention in the Somali Civil War. Is it worth adding it if it's just like in the hundreds? I don't think this is worth. Operation Ocean Shield. Somali pirates get dunked. International intervention in Libya. That's a big one. People didn't like. U.S. intervention in Libya. Total deaths on Libyan civilians, maybe 250. Operation Observant Compass in Uganda. Deaths aren't even listed. U.S. military intervention in Niger. 32 militants killed. Don't care. Okay. U.S.-led intervention in Iraq from 2014 to 2021. (2014 to 2021). Total deaths of ISIS, 70,000 killed. Total civilian deaths in Iraq, 6,000 civilians. U.S. intervention in the Syrian civil war. Jesus. We'll say about 3,850 total civilian deaths. About 3,850 by airstrikes. U.S. intervention in Libya. And this is the current thing in Yemen. So total. Total deaths, if all are attributed to solely to the United States. We would say 55,000. 56,000. 106, 210, 213. Do we count? Well, we should do militants versus civilians. Enemy military. Enemy civilians. So Destiny's just not watching the debate, I guess. Bye, permaband. If you want to watch it, just go to the channel and watch it. This is what I do here. I fact check. It's boring and it's lame, and you don't like it because you've never watched anybody do it in your entire fucking life. There are so many loads to swallow on the internet. Please, go suck one of them off, you degenerate subhuman fuck. Please. Um, 55 plus 1,400 plus 27, I think. Yeah, plus 50, plus 3, plus 70. Enemy military, we'll say about 220,000. One more dead enemy militants. And we'll say for civilians, $46 plus 105 plus 1,000 plus 6,000 plus 4,000. We'll say 162,000 or more civilian deaths. Okay. If we're giving all those, if we're counting all those civilian deaths for Iraq, then yeah, so we wind up with, over the past 24 years, we'll say we can attribute maybe about 220,000 or so or more military deaths, and then about 162,000 or more civilian deaths for the United States that's involved in conflict across the globe. Let's do other conflicts over the past 25 or over the other conflicts since the year 2000 and their fatality counts. Let's do Russia. List of wars, list of conflict involving Russia. Tim raised a point. What? Hey, Destiny, did you ever explain why you've been avoiding Biden/Trump stuff as we've approached peak election season? Honestly, because arguing and debating this type of shit is just really fucking boring to me. It makes me want to fucking kill myself. And it makes me hate my country that I just spent like a whole year learning to appreciate. Almost as much as it makes me hate some of the people in it. This is your bread and butter. Kind of, yeah. Is it true that you're working with the Biden campaign? No, there has never been any evidence whatsoever of any political party paying me some secret under the table thing ever in my entire fucking life. Unlike the other people whose shit you literally swallow directly, ingest directly from their defecating assholes. I actually have some kind of morals and principles, and I generally orient my political values around that instead of just following whatever the fucking trends are or whatever gets me the most fucking clicks. Or whatever, you know, makes me feel the best and gets me on whatever fucking kill you in the video game. I don't even want to. Okay. Let's see. Russian conflict since the 21st century. Why do they get a thing like this? Template. Why do they have a different... Oh, list of wars involving Russia. Cute. Conflicts. The second... Oh. Russia. The Second Chechen War. Total deaths on Russian side. We'll say about 10,000. Total deaths on other Russian side. On Chechen side. Ooh, we got hugely different claims for military. We'll say about 10,000, I guess. Civilian casualties, total deaths. Total civilian deaths. I don't know enough about this conflict to know who these deaths are fairly attributable to. 30,000 civilian dead, 80,000 killed in Chechnya. That's the GFBV estimate. More neighboring regions, 40 to 50,000 killed, more than 600 killed during attacks on Russian property. Total military, civilian. We'll say about 50,000. Is this whole project about what's interesting to you, or is it about what's good for our country and the media discourse? We need you in the trenches debating these idiots. Good for you. The Russo-Georgian War. Negligible deaths here. The Ukrainian war. What are our death estimates right now for this? This goes up to 20. This before the invasion, Russian invasion. It's super contested. Jesus, what a clusterfuck. $150,000 killed. What the fuck? French estimate. How many dead so far? Russia-Ukraine war. We'll guesstimate. We'll say total deaths on Russian side, 100,000 plus. Total deaths on Ukrainian side, 100,000 minus. Destiny. Dave would attribute these deaths to American aggression. I'm just permabanning every stupid fucking comment. I'll respond and then I'm permabanning you so I don't have to waste time. So if anybody else is stupid enough to ask the question, they'll get banned. You have to look the information up to know it before you can begin discussing it. Okay? You don't know the numbers, so you look the numbers up. If he wants to discount them, that's fine, but you have to start from knowing the information. Okay? Russia-Ukraine war, civilian deaths so far. This just says 30,000 civilian casualties. I'm guessing this Probably hasn't been updated much yet. Total civilian deaths, 10,000. Russian intervention in the Syrian civil war. I don't think we need to attribute this to Russia necessarily. We've got the Central African Republic Civil War, the Mali War, jihadist insurgency in Burkina Faso. Let's see, interventions here. Casualties. Okay, these numbers aren't too big. These numbers aren't too big, and these numbers aren't too big. Okay. Syrian Civil War. Let's see, total deaths, total kill. Does this include civilians as well, or is this just militants and then this is civilians on top of that, or? Well, let's. Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. This is a really shit source for this. There should be a rule in Wikipedia against sourcing important data from articles that just like incidentally like mention a number. Unless maybe this website, maybe they do their own calculations or something. Analysis. Okay, maybe, never mind, I'm sorry. Maybe they do for this. Okay, Tim. Oh, they don't really do an analysis of this actually. No, this is a bad source for this. We'll say the total deaths are about 580,000 people. This says nearly 618,000 people. Okay, we'll just average it out. We'll say 600,000 people. Yemen War. Yemeni Civil War. Syria has started what, 2011? Yeah. The Arab Spring. 377,000 plus people killed. 85,000 Yemeni children dead from starvation. Jesus. You aren't doing the meme of Russia did the Syria war, are you? If so, then you must add the Libyan conflict for America's death total then because of the fall of Gaddafi and Benghazi and the millions of migrants and crime that fled into Europe. The last half of that statement was so fucking retarded, I can barely even imagine you being able to feed yourself without spilling everything all over your fucking shirt and pants like the retarded hand shaking, knuckle dragging, mouth breathing, pants sniffing, fart inhaling, gasoline huffing, hydrogen peroxide drinking, nose picking, booger eating, 45 IQ dipshit that both of your parents must have been to create somebody as fucking retarded as you. You're gone. Okay. I'm not counting all of the Syrian civil wars as Russian deaths. Okay. Trying to think of major conflicts. Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's see. I don't know fuck all about African conflicts. Let's check. Genocides in 21st century. Sri Lanka Civil War. I ordered a shirt from your last merch drop. Do you know what the average lead time on those being delivered are? I feel like they would have been delivered by now, no? Jesus, fuck. Is this... Are these numbers... I don't know... What are the total years of this? Oh, this is from 83 to 2009. We'll just say Sri Lankan conflict through 2009, 170,000 civilian deaths. I wonder how many people died in the first Chechen war. God damn. 100,000 plus civilians, maybe? Or around 100,000? It's 21st century. 62,000 Nigerian Christians have been killed by Boko Haram. Sounds like an anime. The Boko Haram insurgency, we'll say 350,000 deaths total. During the Congo Civil War. Jesus. Congo Civil War. (1998 to 2003). Say about 350,000 deaths. Darfur. (2003 to 2005). Over 200,000 deaths. Got Chinese memers. The Rohingya. (2016 to 2017). 25,000 deaths. The South Sudanese Civil War. God damn. I don't know fuck all about Sudan. This is completely separate from all the Darfur stuff, right? It was like that was like a decade earlier, right? South Sudanese Civil War. 2018, 190,000 plus, or was 190,000? Wait, 190,000 deaths, 193,000 non-violent deaths. How many people do you think ISIS killed in total? I feel like the number... It can't be that high, right? How many people did ISIS kill in total? A million, perhaps? I feel like the number's got to be under, like, 50,000, no? they had like a lot of land and a lot of militants, but were they really like able to blow up? It's not like they had like a ton of like air ordnance and shit. International Business Times. How many people has ISIS killed? Terrorist attacks linked to Islamic State, of course. 33,000 deaths. Okay, it's not really. Yeah, fuck it. Say about 33,000 deaths. Already got the Yemen war up here. Jesus, how many people have died in all this Ethiopian stuff? Let's see, the Tigray War. (2020 to 2022). God, Jesus, fuck. It's pronounced Tigray. More like your. You know what I'm saying. We'll say about 300,000 civilian deaths. Bro, I can't even pronounce this place. Nagorno-Karabakh. Blockade of the Republic of Artsakh. Artsakh. These aren't real places. I don't even believe this. This is fiction. Armenian population. Bullshit. Okay. How many people have died in this conflict? Jesus. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Okay, that's 541. I thought it was 541,000. Conflicts that Wagner Group has been involved in. I feel like if somebody wanted to say the United States has to take credit for every single death that like the U.S. has ever been tangentially involved in, then you would have to attribute every single death that the Wagner Group has been involved in to Russia. No, but it wouldn't even be close. Okay, so I feel like if I feel like a statement is super wrong, and we have a red, we redline it, or that doesn't make sense. That's usually like crossing out on a term sheet or something. We'll put it in red. We should have like a challenging question that we could ask, and I think the challenging question would be: Do you stand by the claim that the United States has been the greatest purveyor of violence in the 21st century? Question mark. Greater than Russia in all of its wars, plus the involvement of the Wagner Group across, it's mainly the Middle East and Africa, right? Greater than the multiple genocides / conflicts that have occurred in Africa over the past 25 years, including, question mark. Did you say that America is a greater purveyor of violence than Boko Haram, ISIS? Who are the parts here for Congo Civil War? Who are the parties here? So like I said, I don't know fuck all about like who's blamed for this or or the, I'll say Sudanese government, question mark? Shouldn't you be comparing America's violence to Russia and China? Boko Haram will never be the decider of... no, I shouldn't be, because he said that America was the greatest purveyor of violence. I think that's a wild statement. I don't think that statement can stand. Have you considered that he might not engage with the body count as the metric and make some shit up about destabilization or number of conflicts? Okay. I don't understand. This is how I... Let me explain this one time, okay? Before I just go back to banning all of you for the fucking retarded questions, okay? Somebody says, I think John is taller than Jane, okay? Oh, he said that John is taller than Jane. Well, okay. Well, when was the last measured height of both of these people? I want to look that up, okay? As soon as I say that, like, Every fucking retard is like, well, what about if they measured them when they were wearing shoes? Or wait, what if those are older and now their height's different? Oh, what if when he said taller, maybe he only meant when the one guy had an afro? Like, just, you look up the numbers, you make the argument. If he does a counter argument, then you counter the counter argument, okay? If he wants to use a different metric, then you ask for the metric and you go from there. All I can do is go with what's presented in the conversation. I don't know what his counter response would be. Dave isn't a man of counter responses. He's a man of slogans and one-liners, okay? Jesus. All right. Good job. 6 minutes through.
Who has imposed its will on tiny, helpless nations across the world. As far as that, yeah.
The United States has imposed its will on tiny nations across the world. How is that any different than what Russia is doing? Than what Russia has done with Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova? Question mark.
It's not good that Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. And yes, certainly that's something we don't want to see.
Oh, good
My
job.
argument would be that America and the West more broadly had many opportunities, many off-ramps to put this fire out or at least calm it down. And at every single turn, poured more gasoline on this fire. That ultimately resulted in the invasion in 2022.
America and the West had many off-ramps to stopping this conflict, but chose not to, leading to the invasion in 2022. What off-ramps?
Yeah, so Vaush, how can the U.S. say with a straight face that it's not okay for other countries to invade smaller countries?
Well, I think it's kind of a cowardly non-argument because I'm not arguing in favor of.
Vaush, how can the U.S. tell other countries to behave? Question mark.
The moral. I think it's kind of a cowardly non-argument because I'm not arguing in favor of the moral superiority of the United States. That'd be a ridiculous position for me to take. It's not football. We're not taking sides like, waving banners. There are two levels to this when it comes to agency. We're concerned about the broader socio-economic.
Wait, I missed the conclusion. So was he right about the U.S. causing the most deaths in conflict? No, of course. Not even close. It's ridiculous. Even as much as the U.S. is involved in everything else. No, it's stupid.
It's not football. We're not taking sides like, waving banners. There are two levels to this when it comes to agency.
Hold on one second. Okay, fuck. I have to just write down like major claims. I can't go through every single fucking thing because it'll literally take me 10 hours to do this.
It's like, waving banners. There are two levels to this when it comes to agency. We're concerned about the broader socioeconomic and geopolitical context that led to where we are now. And that goes back to the Cold War and even earlier. If we listen to Putin's justifications for the invasion, it goes back to the borders of the Russian Empire, And then there's like the immediate decision making. We mustn't remove agency from the equation. Russia invaded, by Putin's own words, in a sort of territorial land grab. The idea that it was entirely because of a response to Western aggression or NATO posturing is ridiculous and ahistorical. But that doesn't mean the West isn't responsible for helping to create the situation we're in now. We have to balance these two justifications.
Oh, Vaush's argument was pretty good, but he's granting way too much credence to, well, the West is also kind of at fault as well, but okay.
Our arrogance after the end of the Cold War, the fact that rather than reaching out to Russia as a potential future ally, we ostracized, with the shock therapy, the sort of economic devastation of Eastern Europe and the former Soviet states. These contributed to an environment in which future conflict was inevitable. It was reprehensible on the part of the Western governments to participate in this. Look today at the divide between former West and Eastern Germany. I mean, the reason that East Germany is voting so heavily for the AfD is in large part because they see it as a rejection of the doctrine of the West that left them behind after reunification. These should all be taken into account. And we
Is that true? I thought the AfD was just popular because of like immigration shit. I don't know fuck all about German politics. So.
must acknowledge that Putin is a fascist who did a territorial land grab. Those two facts don't contradict each other. They work together to create a complete narrative. With regards to the invasion now, I agree we have to take the threat from Russia seriously. And by that, I mean, we don't want this to scale out infinitely. We don't want this to turn into a global war. That's something we have to take seriously. At the same time, we have to acknowledge Russia does too. And their constant threats of nuclear war, the fact that they started this invasion, the fact that they have been posturing and acting aggressive towards Finland, towards the Baltic states, even like ramping up aggression towards the rest of Western Europe, we must consider again their agency. Now, I think that in the long run, there is a very deleterious consequence to creating an incentive structure where Putin gets to boost his national rep, his prestige, with a successful land grab in Ukraine. I think it would have been disastrous if he could have just marched west and taken the territory, because it would have reaffirmed and rewarded all the worst possible behaviors from him. That doesn't mean I think that we should sort of do a victory lap around Russia. You know, Cold War II, let's win, let's trounce them in Ukraine. I do think that we're in a tough situation because we can't just like magically make Russia, I guess, a democracy or a country less incentivized to invade its neighbors or reclaim historical territory. It's a difficult question, which is why I don't like simple answers.
So, Dave, actually, here's an interesting point that Vaush just raised about the beginning of the war. And, you know, if we may all agree, correct me if I'm wrong, that we all think it would have been bad if Putin had indeed marched into Kiev and took all of Ukraine, et cetera. But that leads us to the question, Dave, of how much U.S. involvement, if any, was just. If we agreed that it was good for the U.S. to perhaps prevent the Russian capture of Kiev, et cetera, at what point did it become too much? At what point?
That's a really good question. Let's see. Will Dave answer? Will he engage at all? Or will he just say, well, the only reason it started is because the U.S. caused it, and not actually engage? What is Dave's response here? Yeah, I mean, the U.S. caused it. We shouldn't have even caused it. That's a guess. What else could he say? The U.S. caused it. I don't know. That's my guess. I can't think of how else he would answer it. Because, I mean, obviously the answer is you have to help at least a little, right? You have to, right?
Is the support no longer just...
Or is he just going, well, we should have tried to negotiate peace?
Or moral. How do you respond to that, Dave?
I think that the point that you could start at a lot of different points. I think the first round of NATO expansion was unjust.
Oh, there it is, yeah. God, he's so stupid. Fuck, I hate him. Dave. The first round of NATO expansion was unjust. Jesus. Is he going to qualify that? So the countries voting to join NATO because they want to be a part of NATO was unjust. Okay.
And was unnecessarily provocative of the Russians.
Was unjust and was unnecessarily provocative of the Russians. How early was what was the year of the first round of NATO expansion? Did this happen in the 90s? After Soviet Union collapse. Was it 2005? I just saw that. Why did this guy say 2005? The alliance invited these guys to begin ascension talks. The alliance's Madrid Summit of 97. These three countries became the first former members of Western NATO in 1999. I should write up a note on NATO. And just to read through all of the like expansion rounds and everything. Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland would have been round 1. And then the next was Bulgaria, and then Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Oh, and Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia. All of this was unnecessary and unjustified.
First round of NATO expansion was unjust and was unnecessarily provocative of the Russians. Let me just, I'm not exactly sure what Vaush is referring to as like coward.
Why? Why was this unjust? Does Dave think that Russia should be able to indefinitely dictate the security arrangements of all of her neighbors? Question mark.
Cowardly
Dave Smith always seems out of his depth in these convos. I disagree. I think he always seems like he's super in depth because he always has these like stupid talking points memorized, but he's very careful to avoid debating anybody that could push him on any of these talking points. He has like one level deeper of talking points than the average person, but yeah, I've never heard him like adequately challenged on any of them.
Was unjust and was unnecessarily provocative of the Russians. Let me just, I'm not exactly sure what Vaush is referring to as like a cowardly non-argument. I simply was directly responding to Ryan's point. If you have a serial killer who's killed far more people than another serial killer, and they claim that they're trying to stop a serial killer because they're so against killing, it's reasonable to point out that no, this is in fact not what's motivating U.S. foreign policy, that no, the butcherers of Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Somalia and Libya and Yemen are not actually motivated by some sense of we can't let big guys pick on little guys. Let's have an honest conversation about what's really motivating this policy. And it has been, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, to increase the power of the American empire. And Russia has always been seen as a force that's outside of the American empire. That's what's been motivating American foreign policy. This is what we're living through here is largely the neoconservative doctrine. It was the worst thing that ever happened in the history of our country is that after we became probably the first ever true global superpower, about 10 years later, the neoconservatives got control of our foreign policy. And this was their plan from the very beginning. So no, I don't think America should have been involved in Ukraine at all. And I certainly don't think that that anything we've done has done anything except make this situation much worse and much, much more dangerous, because now you are experiencing a proxy war with the two biggest nuclear superpowers. I don't think saying any of that is reducing things down to simplistic.
These aren't even worth writing down. These are just so stupid. The only thing the U.S. has done is made things worse? Like, Russia were the ones that invaded, right?
Worldview. And of course, Vaush, you kind of snuck a straw man in there. I wouldn't say that this conflict is entirely because of NATO expansion, but to pretend like that's not a major driving factor in this conflict is to not be dealing with reality.
From now on, if I do a debate, I want to ask the moderator, can we go back and forth on single questions? It would have been nice for Ben Burgess too, but if I were to debate Dave, it would have to be the same. Dave, give me a justification for intervening in another country's foreign affairs. Answer that question. And you get like 10 or 15 seconds. Not these rambling, long, fucking pointless diatribes, these stupid fuck soliloquies where you just go on and on and on for minute after minute after minute. Like, just give me an answer. When would an example be when the United States should intervene in something? Is it never? Should there never, ever be intervention? Is there ever a justifiable reason for U.S. intervention? How should the U.S. respond to growing influence from oppositional countries?
And this has been admitted by all of the top people on both sides. And this was why so many people within the national security apparatus in the 90s opposed the first round of NATO expansion explicitly, because this will provoke a reaction from the Russians. Through the years, the Russians have been crystal clear that Ukraine was their red line. Thanks to the greatest journalist of the 21st century, the hero Julian Assange, who is thankfully now a free man, we know that the current head of the CIA, Burns, told Condoleezza Rice this explicitly, that this
head of CIA Burns, Condoleezza Rice, what did he say explicitly?
This was a red line, and not a red line in the way that America makes up red lines. Like Obama will say, if Assad uses a certain type of weapon on his people, that's a red line for us. It's all just ridiculous. This is a red line in a true sense, in the sense that Jack Kennedy said, putting nuclear missiles in.
Okay, he's not gonna. WikiLeaks. What can somebody tell me what he's referring to here? Condoleezza Rice, Ukraine, WikiLeaks, NATO, Russia. Maybe this. Earthling, the man who foresaw the Ukraine crisis. It's in the first paragraph. Wait, what? In The Atlantic, Anne Applebaum explains Vladimir Putin's militant position on Ukraine as a product of his peculiar biography, with special emphasis on his career in the KGB and his romantic attachment to Russia's bygone glory. Maybe before writing the piece, she should have interviewed William Burns, director of the CIA, back in 2008 when George W. Bush fatefully strong-armed European members of NATO into promising future membership for Ukraine and Georgia. Burns was warning that the consequences would be dire, but not because of Putin's distinctive psychology. In a memo to then Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, Burns wrote, Ukrainian entry into NATO is the brightest of all red lines for the Russian elite, not just Putin. In more than 2.5 years of conversations with key Russian players, from knuckle-draggers in the dark recesses of the Kremlin to Putin's sharpest liberal critics, I've yet to find anyone who views Ukraine and NATO as anything other than a direct challenge to Russian interests. Burns added that it was hard to overstate the strategic consequences of offering Ukraine NATO membership, which he predicted would create fertile soil for Russian meddling in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. As Peter Beinart notes in his newsletter, Burns' analysis is at odds with the claim, lately made in many bloc communiques, I don't know how to pronounce the word, including Applebaum's, that the Ukrainian crisis is largely driven by Putin's fear of encroaching democracy. I mean, in 2008, was this conversation around when that was the Georgia invasion, right? Georgia invasion, Russia. Am I making that up? No, it was 2008, yeah. Okay. WikiLeaks. Following a muted first reaction to Ukraine's intent to seek a NATO membership action plan at the Bucharest summit, Foreign Minister Lavrov and other senior officials have reiterated strong opposition, stressing that Russia would view further eastward expansion as a potential military threat. NATO enlargement, particularly to Ukraine, remains an emotional and neuralgic issue for Russia, but strategic policy considerations also underlie strong opposition to NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia. In Ukraine, these include fears that the issue could potentially split the country in two, leading to violence or even, some claim, civil war, which would force Russia to decide whether to intervene. Additionally, the GOR and experts continue to claim that Ukrainian NATO membership would have a major impact on Russia's defense industry, Russian-Ukrainian family connections, and bilateral relations generally. In Russia, the GOR fears continued instability and provocative acts in the separatist regions. End summary. Wait, what is the GOR? This was in February of 2008. Hold on. NATO expanded, but Russia's not allowed to. Sloppy Joes. The difference is that you vote in your country to join NATO. Russia invades and forces you to join them. Bye. During his annual review of Russia's foreign policy, Foreign Minister Lavrov stressed that Russia had to view continued eastward expansion of NATO, particularly to Ukraine and Georgia, as a potential military threat. While Russia might believe statements from the West that NATO was not directed against Russia, when one looked at recent military activities in NATO countries, establishment of U.S. forward operating locations, etc., they had to be evaluated not by stated intention, but by potential. Lavrov stressed that maintaining Russia's sphere of influence in the neighborhood was anachronistic, and acknowledged that the U.S. and Europe had legitimate interests in the region, but he argued while countries were free to make their own decisions about their security and which political military structures to join, they needed to keep in mind the impact on their neighbors. Actually, wait. When were these cables released? They weren't released in 2022, were they? Can you see release dates on the WikiLeaks stuff? Or is that not possible? Ooh, The date at the top? This is the date of the cables. I don't think it's the date of the release. No? Leak. This was leaked in... this dates back to 2015. I'm just making sure this came out before the war started. Okay. Lavrov emphasized that Russia was convinced that enlargement was not based on security reasons, but was a legacy of the Cold War. He disputed arguments that NATO was an appropriate mechanism for helping to strengthen democratic governments. He said that Russia understood that NATO was in search of a new mission, but there was a growing tendency for new members to do and say whatever they wanted simply because they were under the NATO umbrella. Attempts of some new member countries to rewrite history and glorify fascists. During a press briefing of January 22nd, in response to a question about Ukraine's request for a MAP, The MFA said a radical new expansion of NATO may bring about a serious political military shift that will inevitably affect the security interests of Russia. The spokesman went on to stress that Russia was bound with Ukraine by bilateral obligations set forth in the 97 Treaty on Friendship, Cooperation, and Partnership, in which both parties undertook to refrain from participation in or support of any actions capable of prejudicing the security of the other side. The spokesman noted that Ukraine's likely integration into NATO would seriously complicate the many-sided Russian-Ukrainian relations and that Russia would have to take appropriate measures. The spokesman added that one has the impression that the present Ukrainian leadership regards a rapprochement with NATO largely as an alternative to good neighborly ties with the Russian Federation. Ukraine and Georgia's NATO aspirations not only touch a raw nerve in Russia, they engender serious concerns about the consequences for stability in the region. Not only does Russia perceive encirclement and efforts to undermine Russia's influence in the region, it also fears unpredictable and uncontrolled consequences which would seriously affect Russian security interests. Experts tell us that Russia is particularly worried that the strong divisions in Ukraine over NATO membership, with much of the ethnic Russian community against membership, could lead to a major split involving violence or, at worst, civil war. In that eventuality, Russia would have to decide whether to intervene, a decision Russia does not want to have to face. Okay. Dmitry Trenin, deputy director of the Carnegie Moscow Center, expressed concern that Ukraine was, in the long term, the most potentially destabilizing factor in U.S.-Russian relations, given the level of emotion and neuralgic triggered by its quest for NATO membership. The letter requesting MAP consideration had come as a bad surprise to Russian officials who calculated that Ukraine's NATO aspirations were safely on the back burner. With its public letter, the issue had been sharpened because membership remained divisive in Ukrainian domestic politics. It created an opening for Russian intervention. Trenton expressed concern that elements within the Russian establishment would be encouraged to meddle, stimulating U.S. overt encouragement of opposing political forces and leaving the U.S. and Russia in a classical confrontational posture. The irony Trenton professed was that Ukraine's membership would defang NATO, but neither the Russian public nor elite opinion was ready for that argument. Ukraine's gradual shift towards the West was one thing, its preemptive status as a de jure U.S. military ally another. Trenton cautioned strongly against letting an internal Ukrainian fight for power, where MAP was merely a lever in domestic politics, further complicated. Okay. Was there ever, this is 2008. Was it, did NATO ever make any formal promises to Ukraine about membership? NATO, Ukraine, membership promises. This was 2023. Let's see. Before 2022. Myths and pretexts, or what I need to be before 2014. NATO promised Ukraine full membership in 2008, but without explaining how or when. Bucharest Summit 2008. Let's see. The alliance did not offer a membership action plan to Georgia or Ukraine, largely due to the opposition of Germany and France, but pledged to review the decision in December 2008. Even though Georgia was not offered a map, it welcomed the decision. So that let's see. We reiterate the decisions on enlargement are for NATO itself to make. NATO welcomes Ukraine's and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations to membership in NATO, but we agree today these countries will become members of NATO. Both nations made valuable contributions to the alliance. We welcome democratic reforms in Ukraine and Georgia and look forward to free and fair parliamentary elections in Georgia in May. MAP is the next step for Ukraine and Georgia on the direct way to membership. Today, we make clear that we support these countries' applications for MAP. Okay, so no formal offer, but they basically said maybe in the future. We believe in you. You're on a good path.